What's up, guys? Glad you're back at the channel. I'm Paul. This is Pauline Theology, and I've got another book review for you. This time, we're going to dive into the book called Fault Lines by Voddie Baucham. Now, Voddie Baucham called this Fault Lines because he says, hey, where you're living at is a beautiful place, like Sunny Beach in California, but underneath is some dangerous things that could be going on and that are going on. People don't want to really live there whenever it has the earthquakes, but they stay there because it looks so pretty on the outside. And he's saying that's basically what CRT is in the framework in which they use. Is like, man, some of it's such beautiful and captivating ideas that we grab from it, but really underneath it, it's lying on faulty ground. And when that fault happens, it can destroy the church. And he does not want this to happen. So already, spoiler alert, is that Voddie Baucham is not for CRT. And so he writes this book to preach against it, its use in the church, and matter of fact, its use in society. So one of the things he does to do that is he sets up his background to understanding it, how he's black, came from a family, a poverty family, also as well as going and getting a degree in sociology and the social sciences. So he has an understanding and a framework from where this even comes from. And then next, he kind of gives a description of the origins of CRT, social justice theory, and all these critical theory from the Frankfurt School, so that you kind of understand where its origin lies or where its presuppositions lie in understanding the way in which people use CRT. He even talks about the founders of it and how they use it and how they've come up with the ideas for such a theory, and even goes on to say about its pagan background, its spiritual background that is contrary to the gospel, to the Bible, and all of that. He's vehemently against it, and he just talks about that in this book. I think he also explains kind of the tenets of CRT and like each position that is held from it. He goes further to talk about it in a way that I thought was unique, is that he compares it to the church as like its priest, its scripture, its main thinking. I think that he does that in a pretty good way. But a criticism I would give is that I really couldn't, even though he did it that way, it was really hard for me to kind of understand where he was coming from in attacking critical theory, because for me, reading this book from Voddie Baucham, I thought that he would be using more scripture to combat the ideas of CRT, critical theory, social justice theory. I thought that he would be using the framework of the Bible to be able to talk about that. And don't get me wrong, he does in the very end of the book, the last chapter, and then some of his appendices where he talks about the Dallas, I think it's called the Project, something like that, and as well as the original framing of it from the SBC, from the original author, and how they changed it to what I think it's Article 9 was whenever it passed at the Southern Baptist Convention. So he does at the end, but I thought that it would be dripping through the entire book. But mostly what he does is use the Bible as a proverbial sense, which I mean that he uses to talk about how we should apply our wisdom and our thinking and our correct view of the world to understand the critical race theory and its implications on our society. Because as he continues to talk about critical race theory, he actually talks about it in more of a factual, world-based idea, and how it is not true in the sense, not that it doesn't that doesn't agree with the Bible, which he vehemently says it does not agree with the Bible, it is not compatible with the Bible. But he talks more about how, if we look at the facts truly, that this is not true. I think that's a big part of what he talks about in critical race theory, or about critical race theory in his book Fault Lines. It just talks about more of the facts, more of statistical understandings, more of the personal experience and the hegemony that is going on in society as compared to what the facts of the case actually say. And he went on a bulk about that in his book, which I thought was good, because I think that it showed clearly sometimes our faulty thinking about situations that we're in, or even like the lies that have been propagated because of the main agenda of the world, I guess the media and stuff, is to say that this is happening. And so, because it's been rooted in our thinking for a while. So he kind of shows like that faulty thinking that we as a society in America may have because of it, which I thought was good, but I'm a Christian, and I wanted to see the foundation of it being rooted in Scripture and how it's directly opposed to Scripture rather than how it's not necessarily true in real world applications. So it's not necessarily true in real world applications, but I just would have rather seen him talk in a biblical perspective of it. So, but I think that was actually his purpose, though, was that we could actually take a step back and look at it overall to see if CRT, social justice theory, critical theory, Marxism, oppressor versus oppression is like an actual thing that could be viewed or relative to our world today. Another thing that's critically against him is that he is staunchly against it and sees no place in the church for it at all. And personally, I guess this is a personal conviction, is that I think that in everything there is a seed of truth because of the image of God in us. And because of that, there are truths that we can pull out of it, but they are applied incorrectly in the social justice, critical theory, critical race theory, all of these intersectionality, all these stuff. I think that it's applied wrongly. Even though the idea of truth is there, in a way, it is applied incorrectly. And because of that, it is not to be used in the church. But it seems like he doesn't even want to give it any ground at all for which it's to stand. And I can understand because of the title of the book, Fault Lines. He believes that it's got some things that look good, has a great veneer, but underneath it will crack and it'll be like sinking sand and we'll fall under it. Do I recommend the read? I do. I think that it will give a good sense of how he views and sees critical race theory and its wrongness in society, and how that it is incorrect to even view as a logical worldview because of all of its presuppositions. So I think that it is a good read in that aspect. Also, he does, in the end, like I say, tie it back to Scripture, but I don't think that the bulk of it was aimed at trying to understand it as a biblical worldview in that aspect. I think the aim was to show its fault as a worldview and how it is not true to the reality that we actually live in, that it is different than what we think. So I think in that way, yes, it's a good read. Would I have rather have had more of Scripture in it? Of course. That's just me. But yeah, take a look at it. If you're thinking a little bit more about trying to figure out what this whole thing is about critical race theory, what it means, where it came from, why it's bad, or why we as Christians shouldn't uphold to it, then check it out. Yeah, it's definitely worth the read. I appreciate you guys for checking me out, man. Also, check out some other stuff I got going on. I got some podcasts up. Wherever you find podcasts, you can look out Pauline Theology's Daily Devotional. I got them up here on the YouTube channel, but I'm going to stop posting them. Okay, I'm going to stop posting them, and they're just going to go strictly to the podcast. So if you want to check that out, you want to continue watching, man, go ahead and download the podcast. Unless you guys tell me different, then yeah, I'm going to stop posting those. So I appreciate you guys for checking it out. Hope you look at that, and I will see you guys in the next video.